What the mind values, what the thought process values, is content. Content is solid. It's predictable. It's choreographed. It's based on the conditions that we carry with us inside consciousness. It's stereotyped. It feels solid and predictable. This is the content of your life. Situations, people, reactions, storylines, narratives. So how do we look beyond the content? What is here that is not content? What is here that is not predictable? Not consistent? What you can't put your finger on. You can't define it. You can't describe it. You can't point it out to anyone. You can't point it out to yourself. And yet, it's very much alive. Very much the case. It's true. It's intimate, real. Even beyond real. Beyond the realm of real and unreal. The mind will doubt this. The thoughts will say, that doesn't make sense. So it can't be. Well, just because something doesn't make sense doesn't mean it can't be. If something doesn't make sense, either you don't understand it, and it requires more explanation, or what you're talking about, what you're referring to, what you're interested in, is beyond the mind, beyond concept. It's non-conceptual. So what we're pointing to here is beyond the thought process. It's beyond it, but it's also more intimate. It's more fundamental, more primary, too close to be thought about. To think about something, we have to put it at a distance. We have to make an object out of it. We have to give it a label which immediately makes it not me, not this. When we give it a label, we also say it's not that or that or that. So we put it in a box. If we can put it in a box, it's not the ultimate. It's not closer than close. It's not the ineffable. So can you orient to the ineffable? Can you orient to that which you can't understand? That is not fixed in time or space, but is very real? How would you do that? Well, you don't do it by thinking about it. You don't do it by understanding. You don't do it by standing apart. It's a sort of surrender or acquiescence to this moment. It's a noticing what is at a distance, what does feel consistent, predictable, understandable, and then looking elsewhere, looking closer, looking everywhere at the same time, looking far and near at the same time. It's in the senses. Before we start labeling the senses, before we call it a color, what is it? Before we call that sound, sound, and label its source or its variety, what is it? Before we label the movement of mind, what is it to be the thinker, the aware one? What is it to be primary being, I before we label it at all. Before we even label it with the phrase I or I am. Can you just rest there? When you rest there, it's not anywhere specific. It's nothing you can pin down. Nothing you can hold on to. There's nothing you can say about it. But it doesn't mean it's not there. It's very much there. In fact, it's there primary to saying anything. Just like the sound is primary to all labels, all beliefs and thoughts about where it is, how it's transmitted, and what it means. It's just that. Just the hum, just the hiss of the air conditioner, just the sound of the music. What is it before labels? What is it before we turn it into content? What is it before it's yours? Or before you start contemplating its meaning to you, or how it's affecting you, or whether you like it or don't like it? Can you follow it that closely? Sound? Can you stay so attuned to sound that the mind doesn't drive a wedge between you and sound, between awareness and sound? Can you hear where there's just awareness sound? Sound awareness? One and the same? And then sound? And then sound? And then sensation? And then mind? Consciousness? Just consciousness? Unbound? Not conscious of, just purely conscious. Not even conscious of self. So there's just that knowing of nothing specific. Do you have to do anything to be there? Do you have to maintain that? Or is it already? Is it already just as it is? Can you leave that space? When there's content, you can leave it and look for other content. This is primary. It includes all content. But itself is void of content. It's nothing specific. You don't need to think about what it is. You don't need to find it. You don't need to meditate your way into it. So stay here. Let reality wake you up. Let reality wake up to itself. Don't get in its way by adding content, or what it means to you, or for you, or comparing it to an idealized state, or comparing it to someone else's description of an experience or what realization is supposed to be. That's content. This is contentless. It's more real than purpose, more real than meaning, more real than knowing. It's pure knowingness.